everyone, and welcome to another episode of Survive This Crit, the podcast where we combine our love for horror movies and RPGs to assess whether we could survive the horror movie. I'm your host, Nick DePino, and with me as always,
I'm your host, Kylie Olson. Thanks for joining us today.
Yes, and in this episode, we are starting our next series, 2014's found footage film As Above, So Below. So, Kylie, how are you feeling about this movie right now?
I'm really excited to get into it. I've been on a bit of a horror movie binge lately because 2024 was the year of like a lot of good horror movies coming out, and I hope 2025 will be the same. So I'm very excited to get into this movie. But in addition to that, I wanted to share a couple things I've been watching, especially since one of them is horror. I saw the new Nosferatu. And
Oh my gosh, was it good? I've been curious about it.
I loved it. Joshua hated it.
Really?
So there's the two like spectrums of opinions. Like I was eating it up, and because I really like the 1931 Dracula. I don't know, Dracula. And the 1922 Nosferatu. So it followed a lot of the same story, but I feel like everyone's character had a deeper purpose and like their character arcs were enriched and there was just a lot more going on. And the director is the guy who directed The Witch with Anya Taylor-Joy and The Lighthouse with Robert Pattinson. So he like has a knack for doing like kind of dark, moody horror type stuff that has like usually is a period piece as well. So I really liked it, and I'm actually thinking pretty soon we should probably do one of his films because he's going to be making, I believe, a Wolfman adjacent type story in the future.
Another wolf movie? Oh
what
my
the
gosh.
hell? Like, excuse me, but no, there's been so many wolf movies now coming out. Like, we did our Halloween Spooktacular on it 2 years ago. For those of you who are really into werewolves, check it out because we dive into the mythos, the lore, like a lot of the werewolf films and more. But now Hollywood is like pumping out like 2 or 3 or 4 wolf movies all in a row. Wolves became cool again out of nowhere.
We were just ahead of the curve by like
We
a
were.
year.
We really
Oh my
were.
gosh.
I'm really proud of us for that, honestly. Look at us, wave makers, on as our like little account is growing. So yeah, that's a really long-winded way to say I really, really liked it. We saw it in theaters. That's the way to go see it. It's not as good like seeing it at home because I think horror is more fun when you're with like an audience and everyone gets to experience it together.
No, I agree. Curious here. You said it follows both the story of Dracula and Nosferatu, and when we did our Halloween Spectacular on vampires, I remember Nosferatu was pretty similar, but like are all the characters the same? Like, was there any significant differences between this Nosferatu and 1922's Nosferatu?
So not to spoil anything since you've not seen it, but the main woman, because in both Dracula and Nosferatu, she's kind of, at least especially Nosferatu, diagnosed with like some form of hysteria because it's 1922, and that's how they.
And
Say,
everyone
a woman
was
has
diagnosed
feelings.
with hysteria.
A woman is sad. She's hysterical. Oh no.
She can't be sad. She must be crazy.
Yeah, literally. So I think this time it gave more purpose behind why her character was feeling the way she was. I think that's the most least revealing way to, and that's partially why I liked her arc so much. So yeah, I really liked it. Willem Dafoe is in it too, which is fun.
Isn't Nicholas Hoult in it?
Yeah.
I'm just noticing that he likes to be in horror movies, so it's funny to see him yet again in another vampire movie in the last, was it 2 years? So
yeah,
it's interesting. I definitely will go make an effort to see this film, and I'm a sucker for anything with Willem Dafoe in it.
So good. But yeah, and then the other thing I've been watching is there's a new show. It's not that new. There's 3 seasons of it on Peacock called Traitors. A friend recommended it to us. It's a reality show starring reality personalities. So it's people from like it's all people from all across the reality universe. There's people from The Bachelor, there's people from Big Brother, from Survivor, from like every reality show. And they all come together and they compete for money. So it's kind of like a mix between like Squid Games in some ways, minus like death, and a real life game of mafia. So there's like traitors and faithfuls, and people have to kill each other off. And it's really fun. And the drama is like at least once an episode, Joshua and I will literally be jaw dropped because of the shenanigans that have been going on with just like it's a really interesting study of the human psyche. Thank you, Jamie, for recommending that. We interviewed her a few series ago, and we'll link it below. But yeah,
Oh, that was
obsessed.
Jamie's recommendation?
Yeah, it was a Jamie recommendation.
Okay, okay. That sounds I'm more convinced to watch this now. It seemed like she had good taste and stuff, so.
Oh my gosh. Well, apparently I don't. Thank you for that, Nick.
No, that's not what I meant, but it's
But
just,
it is what you meant.
hey, you know what? It's okay.
It's okay. It's
We
okay. We
all
can
watch
live
the same things
differences.
eventually, so we all have great taste.
Yeah. What have you been watching?
Most of my TV viewing has been focused on Apple TV since I got this
Love Apple
brand new
TV.
computer. It's been
Hey.
doing so great for us for recording. I get 3 free months of Apple TV, so I've been on it, just trying to watch and cram as much of it in as possible. So last episode, I think I talked about lessons in chemistry, which was
Oh.
a great. So yeah, so that's been a great one. It's a great show for anyone who is a fan of either a chemistry, obviously,
Mhm.
or cooking, because that's the whole premise of it is that chemistry and cooking are very similar. One really ties into the other,
Yeah.
and it's also just a great story about this woman who has to go through the struggles and find out how to get her life together, trying to be a single mom in the 1950s.
There's a book about it too. So,
Yes,
uh,
that's right. It's based on a book. So I thought it was pretty good. There is one episode that I think was just absolutely atrocious the way that they decided to tell the story from a very specific perspective. I'm not going to
mhm.
give any spoiler on it, but if you ever watch it, Kylie, you'll probably know what I'm talking about. They just threw this one plot narrative device out of left field, and it was
Mm.
there for like one episode, and both my wife and I were like, "What is this? This makes no sense. Get this out of here." Because again, I said it was a narrative device, so it was someone narrating, like doing voiceover work, and it was
Oh,
BJ
interesting.
Novak from The Office, Ryan
What?
Kemp. And
That's so random.
when she saw, I just thought this was hilarious. She was like, "Oh, it was BJ Novak doing this? No wonder he sounded douchey."
That's so funny.
So there was lessons of chemistry, and the other one we've been watching a lot of is Shrinking. Shrinking is great. It's got
Joshua
Harrison
started
Ford in
that.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
Harrison Ford is in it. He's a lot of fun. Jason Segal's in it. Just a great combo there. Uh,
Hmm.
for anyone who doesn't know what it is, it's basically Jason Segal is a psychiatrist in Pasadena. He works in a psychiatry firm that's led by Harrison Ford. And basically, one day, Jason Segal is just kind of fed up with his career. He's been trying to focus more and more into his career to kind of help cope with the death of his wife from the past year.
Oh.
And in doing so, he's sort of neglected his daughter. And after a year of doing this, he's kind of just realized that his life is not where he wants it to be. He's upset with the fact that he has so many patients and he can't actually solve their real problems. He just has to come in and listen to their their sob stories, their
Mm.
things that they want to complain about every session. And he just one day decides to flip the table on it, and he starts like giving people what he thinks is actual productive advice.
Oh my
And
gosh.
and the last one I'm watching right now, I'm only 2 episodes into it because they're only releasing episodes every week. Is the
Hmm.
second season of Severance, which is a great show.
Oh my
Love it.
gosh. I've heard such good things about Severance. I have not seen it, but I think a lot of Apple shows are really ingenious with their storytelling. They seem to have like very, very interesting plots across the board. They don't seem to follow as many tropes. It seems like it's a lot more originals that are coming out, and originals and some IP stuff, but a lot less sequel type material or like reboots. I've just been
Yeah.
a big fan of like the Apple originals that have been coming out.
Yeah, that's been the thing. That's part of the reason. So part of the reason why I don't usually go and subscribe to Apple TV, I always just get excited and jump onto these free 3 months that they give, is
Hmm.
that they have such great Apple TV original stuff,
They really do.
but there's just so little of it. And I feel like they do this thing of this, they have this method of only delivering stuff that, like you were saying, is truly original, has high quality to it. They're not just
Yeah.
churning out crap like every couple months to keep people entertained.
I could be wrong about this, but I believe that Apple TV also, because it's only been around for a couple of years, it's not like it doesn't generate nearly as much revenue as like one of the giants like Netflix. And since
Hmm.
Apple's policy seems to have been higher quality and less shows, that's probably why they can't generate as much, because they don't want to put themselves in a difficult financial position. But it's interesting though. I've noticed that it seems like some of the tech companies that have started their own TV and film side have been putting out some of the more original content, because Amazon has some hidden misses too, but like Apple seems to be, and they're both high tech companies. Apple seems to be generating out some good stuff. So I do have like a running list. Actually, Joshua and I talked about that literally last weekend. We were like, should we, is it time? Should we get Apple again? But we're
Yeah,
always watching like 4 or 5 shows at a time, so it's hard to
it's
keep
always
track
tough to
as is.
keep the balance going, keep track of everything. But yeah, that's basically why anytime like I get excited about us buying any new Apple product, like a new computer or something, or a new phone, we have to replace the phone. I'm like, sweet, here we go, baby.
Let's
Three
go.
months, 3 months. I know exactly where I'm going every time.
That's awesome. That's a life hack right there for anybody who's an Apple user. Well, let's get into our film at this point. So,
Mhm.
we are talking about As Above, So Below, the 2014 film. Nick, do you have a summary for us?
I do indeed. All right, so as above, so below. Archaeologist Scarlett Marlowe has devoted her whole life to finding one of history's greatest treasures, Nicholas Flamel's Philosopher's Stone. According to legend, the artifact can grant eternal life and turn any metal into gold. When she learns that the stone is hidden underground in the catacombs of Paris, she assembles a crew to guide and document her historic mission. As they begin their descent, the team members have no way of knowing that they are entering into their own personal hell.
Dun dun dun. A brief introduction to this film. This film was released January 29th, 2014. There are mixed sources out there for the budget, but generally people think it's either 5 million or between 5 and 10 million dollars. But the film grossed $41 million dollars worldwide, 8 million their opening weekend, and 21 million domestically, 20 million internationally. Written and directed by John Eric Dowdle, co-written by his brother Drew Dowdle. So you may know him for primarily as known as a horror director. He's known for Quarantine back in 2006, No Escape 2015, and Devil 2010, which is that elevator horror movie. I don't
Mm.
know if you're familiar with that.
Is it bad if I say that I'm not familiar with any of those movies?
I think you would probably really like Devil. I've seen it and it's scary, but like interesting scary. I haven't seen the others though. So
Mm.
maybe we need to watch more of his stuff. This film was produced by Legacy Pictures and distributed by Universal Pictures. This was actually Legacy and Universal's first deal together, which is, I think, worth mentioning. Awards and nominations. It was nominated for a handful of things through the South by Southwest Film Festival, Golden Trailer Awards, Fangoria Chainsaw Awards, but a lot of it didn't have to do with the writing or directing or anything having to do with production. It really was like mostly best horror poster, best title design, which I thought was worth mentioning because it's really kind of unique that way for a horror movie
Wait,
that
wait,
got
wait.
nominated. So it was mostly poster and design stuff that it got nominated for awards, but it didn't win anything.
Good.
Okay, well, Nick has some opinions. Let's see if you match the tomato meter. Nick, what do you think the critic score was for this movie?
Well, I'm definitely going to say that it had to be low just watching the film. I'm going to say 30%.
Wow, you were really, really close. It was 29% from the critics.
Oof.
You are on fire today. Okay, what about the audience score?
Score. I'm going to say 20% from the audience.
You are
No,
so off. 41%.
the
You are
audience thought
basing
it was
that for
better.
sure on your own opinion, for
It is.
sure.
It was not a good movie.
Save it for your thoughts and opinions. A general recap of some of the reviews. A lot of people loved it in recent years, and they found it to be scratching like this certain itch in the horror genre that doesn't really exist. Other people found that it didn't really have a sense of reality or really a plot, and they thought that the chaos throughout the movie felt random, and they didn't like the leading lady.
Mm,
But what do you think our fellow letterboxed snobbians thought of this movie,
mm. The
myself included?
snobbians. Well, no, now I'm wondering if I qualify as a snob, given all the horror movies I haven't liked throughout our whole
Throughout the
podcast
show.
here, throughout the show. Oh man, am I one of the snobs now?
I would
Have I
say
become
you're
one of them?
you're approaching snobbian territory.
Oh no. Okay, okay. I'm gonna say to keep in track with the 30% and the 40%. Let's play it safe. Let's say two stars. 2 stars.
You
No,
are off. They gave it a 3.2 out of 5.
three more than 3 stars. Oh my gosh.
So some of the reviews included someone gave it 5 out of 5. They said, I hated this. I'm not sleeping for 5 years. From Amy. Mary M. Bush gave it a zero point 0.5 out of 5 stars. She said, they forgot to make it make sense and make the main character likable. And Bruno said they gave it a 3.5 out of 5. Their review was super cute first date.
First date.
I think referring to the main characters, the two characters who are like, what if I told you I liked you in the tunnel? But we can talk about that.
That week we spent together where you got me stuck in a prison in a foreign country. Best week of my life. I just didn't want to admit it.
Literally. So, Nick, I think you have some monster movie trivia for me to lose.
Oh, Kylie, come on. Don't be so hard on yourself.
I don't have much hope in myself when it comes to trivia. I mean, there were parts of this movie that initially I was like, I don't know what's going on here.
Oh my gosh, same. And we'll get into it. But, like, yeah, no, I have the exact same feeling. But before we talk about all of that, like you said, we're going to start our monster movie trivia. For anyone who's new to listening to our podcast, I'll break it down for you really fast here. The way this works is I have 10 questions prepared to test whether or not Kylie actually paid attention to the movie. Now, Kylie gets to have 2 questions wrong and still pass. If she gets a third question wrong, that is considered 3 slashes. So, if she gets 3 slashes, she is dead, she loses. But even if she loses, we're still going to go through all 10 questions, so that way anyone else following along can test their knowledge as well. So,
Woohoo.
Kylie, are you ready?
I'm as ready as I'm ever going to be. This is
Okay.
actually the most nerve wracking part when I don't do the trivia, when you're giving it to me. I feel like that's the most nerve wracking part of this deep dive because I know I'm not going to get it, but I'm like, I'm ready to try.
Okay. So, first question here. What underground location does the film take place in?
In the catacombs of Paris.
Good. Okay. That's the baseline.
Okay.
We now know that you knew the premise of the movie. Here's another little baseline question for you. What is Scarlett Marlowe searching for in the catacombs?
The Philosopher's Stone.
Oh, Harry Potter?
Harry Potter, the Philosopher's Stone.
Harry Potter and my descent into hell.
Yeah, that's like the ninth Harry Potter book.
Okay. Question number 3. What phrase is inscribed above the entrance to the catacombs where the group enters?
Oh, it's Abandon all hope, ye who enter here.
That is correct.
I almost said beware of all hope.
Question 4. What historical figure's tomb does Scarlet believe contains clues to the Philosopher's Stone?
Nicholas Flamel.
Correct.
Woohoo.
All
Okay, good.
right.
I did pay attention to at least part of this movie, unless you're just giving me a false sense of confidence.
Maybe. Who knows?
Oh, no.
I will say, it was very funny hearing the name Nicholas Flamel because it just made me think more of Harry Potter. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, right? It's like Harry Potter.
Where's he? Is his ghost flying around? Okay. Question number 5. Who in the group survives at the end of the film?
Oh, gosh. Well, obviously, Scarlet survives. Do you need names or can I give you descriptions?
We'll see if your descriptions are apt. Okay.
Okay. So, Scarlet, the archaeologist, she survives. The guy who's interested in her, who's also really into history and kind of a history buff, he survives. And then the French guy who had a baby that he didn't want, who he abandoned, he also survived. And I don't remember either of their names.
Okay. I'll say their names, but just to make sure I was hearing you correctly with your descriptions, I want to be sure. Who are you? How many people are you saying survived at the end of the film? 3? Okay.
3.
Okay, then I will give it to you because that
Yay!
sounds pretty right as far as describing them. Their names were George, Scarlet, and Zed.
George and Zed. Okay. Yeah, I would not have remembered that. That was part of my opinions. We'll get into it.
Yeah, I honestly, I don't think I'm going to remember their names in another week or so anyways. So then this next one is going to really rough you up. You ready for it? Number 6.
Uh-huh.
Who in the group is the first to die inside the catacombs?
Oh, I'm trying to remember how they all die. I think it's Suxi.
You're you're right. It is. I believe it's
Yes.
pronounced sushi, not sushi. Su- it's very French.
Suxi.
Sushi? No, I feel like it's more like a sh sound, like sushi.
I
don't
think with how it's spelled, I think there's an X. So that's why I was saying Suxi. But
There is an X. You're correct on
Suxi.
that.
Something like that. But yeah, that was rough to watch. Oh my gosh. Yeah, we'll get into it. But she was the first death.
Okay.
Benji was the second.
Benji was the second. Question number 7. What supernatural event happens to George that relates to his past trauma?
I'm trying to think if I'm confused by the phrasing of the question or if I really don't remember what happened in this movie.
Okay.
Supernatural event that happens to him, like specifically. I mean, he sees his little brother under the water and he keeps trying to grab for his brother. And there's like the piano that is his, that's in the catacombs too. So I guess like, would that be the equivalent of seeing like a ghost or something?
Yes, so you're right there. He sees a vision of his younger brother drowning, which represents his guilt over not saving him.
Yeah.
So
that was sad.
it was sad. But good news is he survived.
And good news is I got it right.
Yes, you're doing very well, Kylie.
I'm understanding this movie a lot more than I thought I did.
Well, we know that your weakness is names, but luckily I'm not counting that against you right now. What object does Scarlet realize was a false Philosopher's Stone?
I think you just said the answer in the question. What object did she realize was a false Philosopher's Stone? The stone that she was carrying with her that she found in the painting.
You're kind of right there. I mean, the point was to say that she had a red stone. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Got you. Yeah. So the red stone she had was a fake.
Okay. So that was an easy one there for you. Question 9, which means that you are going to survive through this.
Yeah.
But we got 2 more questions to go. Question 9. What action does Scarlet take that finally allows them to escape?
She puts back the stone.
What else does she do?
She also atones for her sins and realizes that she has the power of the stone in herself. So then she's like, oh, and then everything's fine.
That was the main thing. You're right. She realized the power was inside of her the whole time.
Oh.
No. Don't all that. This is question 10. The film suggests that each character's fate is tied to their past sins.
Mhm.
What past sin haunts Palpalon, Papillon,
Papillon.
leading to
Oh
his death?
yeah, he lit a car on fire and there was somebody inside, and he didn't. I don't know if he knew there was somebody inside, but he refused to acknowledge that he did it. So then he got yeeted.
Can you be a bit more descriptive than
He got
yeeted?
pulled. Okay, he got pulled into the car, the burning car, and then got sunk into the earth with his legs sticking up, and he died.
Okay.
Yeah, so like he.
Congratulations, Kylie. I think you got the first ever perfect score on this
Oh
podcast.
my gosh, I came in with zero confidence too. Maybe maybe I just need to like reverse psychology myself every time I do this from now on and go in less confident. I don't know, but
I don't
nice.
feel like that's a good method, but congratulations on your win.
Thank you. Thank you
Do
very
you?
much. So, Nick, let's pivot here for a bit. Now that I am the winner. Yay. Let's talk about our thoughts and opinions of this movie.
All right. Kylie, do you want to get started? Because I feel like I've already revealed a little bit of mine.
Yeah, you have. I always try to keep it like really neutral until we hit this point of the podcast so that way I can like give my honest review. So, I actually really liked this movie. Aside from like there were parts that really just did not make sense like at all. And I think I've grown over time to like that more because it increased the uneasiness that I had. There was a couple jump scares that I actually closed my eyes, which is I don't remember the last time I've done that in a horror movie, but just the way that it was portrayed, specifically like right before Benji died, I actually closed my eyes because I was like, I can't, it's too much. So there was definitely like it got a very visceral response from me, but I will say that I was annoyed with the trope of like there are so many people here, half of them are just here to be killed off. And I was a little irritated with the fact that the characters knew the answer to every freaking question.
Yes. Oh my
I was
gosh.
like,
Thank you.
okay, how much of know it alls do you have to be? I like the concept of like they're smart, they're prepared going into the catacombs. Like that's all fine and good. But knowing
She
every
had
answer,
she had
like
two PhDs, Kylie. Two PhDs, and he
well, it's
fixes
both
clocks in
yeah,
Paris.
right? Both George and Scarlett were like they just knew every answer, and after a while it got a little annoying because I was like, man, I wish that they would discover or learn something for the first time.
You know what I compared this to in my mind? I was
Hmm.
like, this is literally National Treasure. This is Nicolas
Yeah.
Cage knowing every single fact about American history right off the top of his head.
Right?
Always
Well,
prepared.
I paralleled this to Blair Witch Project for me because there was like the leading lady that like a lot of reviews were really not a fan of, and I didn't mind her. Other than both she and George were like very know it all, like they know every answer. But yeah, I mean, I liked it. Those were like I had a couple gripes with it, but it was a scary movie. It was like I was scared, and I liked the concept of the catacombs. Like the setting was really cool, and actually Joshua and I've added the catacombs to our bucket list because we're like this is cool, we should go down there and like explore the catacombs.
Have you never
But
seen him before?
no, I've been to Paris, but I went
Hmm.
when I was like 18, and I don't think anyone in my family wanted to go to the catacombs except for me.
Oh, I remember
So
I saw it with Kaya and our friends Jordan and Joel.
what was
And
it like in real life to go
in
down
real
there?
life, it wasn't that scary. I don't know. I mean, it was a bunch of bones, and it is kind of sad to think about the true story behind that with people dying and having to be buried down there because of there being no more room for cemeteries in Paris. To be honest, it definitely didn't make me think like, oh, there's a gate to hell somewhere probably under here, or there's some forbidden treasure or anything. I was just like, oh no, this is just a sad part of history.
Yeah, that's fair. I'll have to come back with a report if we ever get to go down there because I would love to do it. But Nick,
Hmm.
what did you think about this movie? Because clearly you've like hinted, pawed at some very profound thoughts about this movie already.
Okay, well, Kylie, it's very tough to hide your opinion when you got to do the tomato meter score. There's always that bias. But yeah, I was just not a big fan of this. I remember my first thing I noted was uh, I I saw like the first like minute of the film, and I was just trying
Hmm.
to like I always like try and keep notes while I'm watching, and I looked down for a minute to just record a little note, and then I look up and I see Scarlet like in a whole other country, and I'm like, wait, what? I got whiplash. I felt like in the first 5 minutes of the film because they were
I
just
felt that too.
because I had no idea what country is she in.
Hmm.
Um, like I don't think they mentioned it until like 20 minutes later. Like they were trying to get so quickly through that first plot point of her
Hmm.
discovering the I believe it was called the
The
Urza
bowl that
Ezra.
had, yeah, the bowl that had the writing on it, right?
Exactly, the one that they could use for doing the
I
base
feel like they could have
translations.
cut that. Like it looked cool, but like it did not help make this story make more sense. It made it more confusing.
It
Especially
really,
because she saw her dad hanging there. So then I was like, what's going on?
yeah, like why is her dad like the only thing I could picture of why they would do that is to hint at like, oh, if you keep doing this, it's you're going to be haunted by this, or it's a warning sign. And in
Yeah.
my mind, I'm like, but she's not anywhere near the gates of hell. Like, how is she having this? And why is this being caught on camera? Like,
Yeah.
what's going on?
Yeah, that was my thought too. Because I literally thought it was an actual character being hung. And I was like, I don't know who this is. So,
Just kind of gave the biggest eye roll when the character that was with her, Reza, just
mhm.
like said to her, looking almost at the camera, "You were just like your father. You were just like your father, and you're obsessing over his life work." And I was like, "Oh, brother, that's what this movie is." She's trying to prove that her dad was right. Cool. It is just like National Treasure.
Yeah.
Or like
Yeah.
The Last Crusade, Indiana Jones, The
Last
Last Crusades.
Yeah, actually, as we'll get into, my little dive has to do a little bit with Indiana Jones. I understand your frustration as a viewer. I did not also enjoy the confusion of it. Except
Hmm.
for when they were in hell, because over time I've appreciated being in a situation like that as a human being would be very confusing, and I almost wish that they were more confused about how to actually get out.
Yeah. I do wish they had a little bit more of what you were saying, the confusion of the journey.
So, Nick, would you consider this movie a horror movie though? Because you keep referencing it to National Treasure and stuff, which is obviously not a horror movie.
No, it's totally a horror movie. They gotta deal with some scary crap and face their past sins. And you know what? I will say this is something that I enjoyed about the film, which was the the solution being that they had to come to terms with their past sins. It felt a little Christian coded in that, and I appreciated that, especially because that makes sense for a place like hell. I feel like people think of hell as like a place for punishment. And it
Hmm.
is, but it's a place more specifically for people who decide that their past mistakes are so great that there is no rectification for them.
Yeah.
That's
It felt
part of
more
it.
hopeful in that way. Like
Hmm.
it gave a sense of hope that was interesting for that style of movie. And I agree with you. I totally found it scary. The right amount of jump scares, literally probably the perfect amount of jump scares. I think any more jump scares I would have been not a happy camper. And I loved that they leaned into both the like psychological side and theological side. It's nice that we added another one to the list that is actually a horror movie because we've had a couple that have been like, yeah, this is a monster movie or something, but it's not really horror. But this was like definitely horror. So Nick, I have a little bit about the origin of the story, about why this movie got made, if you're interested in hearing any of that.
Absolutely, let's hear it.
So, John Eric Dowdle and his brother, they basically made this movie because they wanted to do some sort of docu-style found footage Indiana Jones style movie. And they actually did not like they were not initially inspired by the catacombs. The location was not a first point of inspiration. It was the fact that they wanted to do a docu Indiana Jones thing. But Thomas, the head of Legendary at the time, he gave them a call saying that they wanted to make something in the Paris catacombs. So that opportunity combined with their pitch of doing like documentary Indiana Jones style thing but horror, they like had a movie after that, which was great. Like it's I think the concept is a really beautiful concept, and those two things combined together worked really, really well. So they shot it like literally 4 months after their pitch. It was a really, really fast turnaround. They also mentioned that Tomb Raider had a slight influence on the film, primarily because of Laura Croft and having the badass, smart female lead type character, which was
Hmm.
refreshing. Kind of like The Mummy. We've had like two films back to back that have been like very strong female leads who are very intelligent and very know exactly what the situation is that they're in.
So wait, Kylie, real quick, if I might ask a
Yeah.
question here. At any point in your research, did it come up why Legendary Pictures wanted to do a movie with the Paris catacombs? Like, did it say what the reason was, or did it just come in
No.
one day and was like, "Hey, you know, it'd be a great idea"?
I honestly don't know. I didn't see anything that was like, "Hey, I had a dream last night that we should film in the catacombs." No, I haven't. I didn't see anything other than they wanted to make something in the catacombs, which is
Hmm.
really interesting because this was the first film that the French government gave permission to even film in the catacombs, especially in the off limits areas. No other film had been given that permission up until that point, which is crazy to think about because I was only like a little over 10 years ago.
Wait, so that was
And
actually in the catacombs? Okay, I thought
yeah,
it
the
was
whole movie was filmed in the catacombs.
okay. Interesting. I figured it was just a nice recreation that they did, but
Yeah,
okay,
kind of like,
interesting.
but no, they filmed the entire thing in the catacombs. And part of why they were given permission was because they didn't have a lot of gear. They really relied on a lot of the actors actually having cameras. So a lot of the actors were playing cameramen as well.
Hmm.
And it only took 2 months to film. I thought how they location scouted was really interesting. Basically, the two brothers would just get together and explore different systems of the tunnels and like take pictures of where they thought was cool and then come back and film there. So they just spent a lot of time in those different systems. I think it said 12 days exploring the different systems of the tunnels. And then they were there for 2 months afterwards, which is crazy.
I imagine now they like have this whole mapped out tunnel system going on at the catacombs. They were the real like Papillons, you know?
Yeah, right. So I think a couple things about filming in Paris that were interesting was they didn't use a lot of props. They really had to interact with the environment around them. Like there was real claustrophobia. The actor who played Benji actually really dealt with a lot of claustrophobia in real life, which is
Hmm.
why his performance is so convincing. They dealt with
That
things like
sounds like terrible though. It'd be like,
I
this
know,
guy
right?
actually has claustrophobia. Let's get him down there. We need his real
Well, they
reactions.
told everybody ahead of time. They're like, before they auditioned and before they were hired for crew, they were like, hey, we are filming in the catacombs. There'll be times where you're up to your waist in water. There'll be times where you're crawling literally on your stomach. And then they did like a costume test where they had people come and spend the day in the catacombs after they got hired to make sure they could handle it. And that's where it was kind of revealed that the actor who played Benji really dealt with some claustrophobia, but he was still willing to do it for the role. And he put on a really, really solid performance. I feel like his claustrophobia scene in the beginning like was one of the things that hit the hardest for me out of that whole movie when he's like stuck on the pile of bones and freaking out because the singing is coming behind him. It was I was like so nervous during that. But yeah, so it was real catacombs. There were no bathrooms, they had no electricity, they had spiders crawling on the ground, there were real bones everywhere. There was no cell phone service. They had it were in a really cramped and tight space. So they filmed like that for 2 months, which is wild. It's another film that they actually filmed in the elements, which is really interesting. We've been finding more of those. I figured I'd mention this. So, in addition to having a skeletal crew, which means they only had 5 to 6 crew members down there with them,
Pun intended.
pun intended, totally. They also, for the car scene, that was real.
Wait, what? The burning car scene?
They did the burning car scene down in the catacombs. They got a car down there and they used some sort of fire safe effect where John Dowdle he tested it on himself first to make sure that the mechanic would work right so that way the actor in the car wouldn't actually burn, But yeah, it was literally an actor in a car, in the burning car, in that scene.
But the actor looked like he was on fire, right? I'm trying to remember correctly.
It was some sort of fire safe effect. But yeah, they lit the car up in the tunnels, had some
Oh my
ventilation set
god.
up so that way people could breathe. But yeah, that was all real, which I thought was crazy. Like that's a
No, what's
wild
especially
stunt to do
crazy
in a
about
tunnel.
that, what's especially crazy about that is the guy sitting in the car. He looked like he was
I
chilling.
know.
Like
He
he
was
just
just
looked fine. He was just like sitting there like,
it's like this is that meme. This is fine.
this is totally fine.
This is fine.
Oh, hey, there's my friend. You did this to me. Yeah, but I'm good.
Yeah. And he's like,
No worries.
actually, I'm gonna drag you to hell. Yeah, it was wild. And then one last little thing I wanted to mention about I kind of combined my two biggest deep dive points of origin of the story and filming in Paris. I thought it was really interesting that as above, so below is the first law of magic. And they liked this title because it tied with the theme of finding something in the physical world that's really within us all. You know,
Mm. You
Scarlet's
mean
whole quest for the stone and all
you
that.
mean the thing that I hated probably the most about this movie?
Which why did you hate that so much?
It feels like a cop out. Like I remember us having this discussion last night, and I feel like the only time that that particular plot point works, you're the chosen one, and it turns out the secret ingredient to being the dragon warrior is that it's in you the whole time, or referencing Kung Fu Panda there, or um, there's this theme with kids movies specifically where it's like the ability was within you the whole time. Like that feels great for a kids movie because I feel
Mm.
like kids, especially adults too, adults need to hear that from time to time. But when it's in the context of a kids movie, it just seems to hit better. When it's a horror movie, though, I'm not particularly I'm not one looking for inspiration about my personal life in a horror film, and for especially for the idea being like, oh, the power to heal people with the philosopher's stone, you could turn metal into gold this whole time, you just have to believe in yourself and do it. It was
Mm.
just kind of silly to me. Like I was like, wait a second, you're telling me that anyone who could come down here and do the exact same thing could then like theoretically hopefully get out and then just like start turning metal into gold, start healing people. Like that's the other thing, can Scarlet still do that now that she left?
Yeah, like having the power, ultimate power. But I agree with you. Like, it's kind of a cop out, and there is that reality side of like what happens now that she's alive. And honestly, when the movie ended, I initially thought they were still in hell because I guess maybe that's like the nihilistic, cynical side of me.
Hmm.
I thought that even after they atoned, they still were like in a continued circle of hell. And I was like, that could have been really interesting if they ended up back on Earth, but it's like a hell version of Earth. It would have been, I don't know. My brain was like, that could have been an interesting theme to explore, but then it would have taken away the whole purpose of the characters actually atoning and surviving and all that stuff. But
Yeah,
that was a thought I had.
and I feel like it just kind of undermines the idea, the plot device of a MacGuffin, of like having that object that everyone's trying to get to, and then to
Yeah,
discover the whole time that that's
in
not
you.
really what it is, and it's just in you the whole time. Like it kind of makes the whole thing feel just a little pointless.
But I think it does follow along the first principle of magic and alchemy. So I get why they were like, we
Mhm.
have to make it this route because it is like the movie is themed around alchemy.
I will say I did like the movie a little bit more when I learned that it was based off of Dante's Inferno because I definitely loved reading that book as a kid in high school.
Oh my gosh,
I
I've never read the full thing.
Yeah, it's been a while now, so I vaguely remember it, but it is one of the few books I thoroughly enjoyed reading as a class assignment.
It's really cool. I
Hmm.
know Joshua read it in school too. And I actually have a few points on Dante's Inferno for people who are like me and haven't read it yet, if you want to hear a little refresher.
Let's hear it.
So, Dante's Inferno, a little bit about the background. It was written in 1320 and it's part one of Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy. So it's Inferno and then Paradiso, if because Dante makes it through the Inferno. The first part, though, Inferno, explores the descent into hell and being guided by the Roman poet Virgil. And there's a lot of parallels and references to the movie that the movie made to Dante's Inferno, including at the gates of hell are the words, abandon all hope, ye who enter here, which I think is just like the coolest phrase. It gives pirate vibes for me for some reason. I think it is a reference in like Pirates of the Caribbean, but I like that phrasing and I thought it was really cool. But they also went along with the principle of the only way out of hell is down, specifically down the legs of the devil. And so here's kind of the layout of hell. Upon entering hell, they see the vestibule where lost souls chase the blank flag of eternity. And I thought that was a really interesting concept of the people who remained neutral through life ended up in hell and they just chase nothing for eternity. That was really, really interesting to me. And then a very brief intro to the layers of hell. Do you think you remember the first one?
Yes, yes, yes. I'm trying to recall. I remember it was one of the upper ones, one of the first few. There was something with bugs. I
Mm-hmm.
remember people's heads being turned around, so that they were always looking backwards.
Oh, yeah. I did see a video about that. So the first circle is limbo. It's where the unbaptized souls were, and Dante's Inferno referenced Socrates and Aristotle as
Hmm.
members of the in limbo, which was really interesting that some of our greatest philosophers were there. The second layer is lust, which had the storm of wind, which throws people against rocks. And I think a cool part of Dante's Inferno is he meets different people in each layer and learns their story and learns why they're in these layers of hell and what they've been through.
Yeah,
Um,
I really like the Greek mythos references throughout the story. I remember there was Cerberus.
mhm.
Uh,
Yeah,
I remember there was the
represent.
river. Exactly. I remember there was the river Styx. That was kind of fun.
Yeah,
Uh,
actually, you're so on it. Like my third circle of hell was gluttony, which where Cerberus is. Greed was the fourth layer, which was really interesting of the concept of the prisoners of that layer having to roll weights, like passing weights just back and forth for eternity. Wrath, where the river Styx is, and then it's the gate to lower hell.
yeah, yeah. I think it was the sixth ring is where stuff got super serious.
Oh
Where
yeah.
not saying that that wasn't super serious. That was all weak stuff.
I
But
can
no,
handle that.
I remember I think it was the sixth ring is when they start seeing is when Dante starts seeing demons specifically like Malabranche or something like that, and it's just like demons like taking limbs off of you. Um,
Yeah. So the sixth layer is heresy. So that's where the city of Dis is, and there's firewalls. Then violence is the seventh layer. And that one was like just crazy. The description murderers and boiling in a river of blood, watched by centaurs, which is another like Greek mythos reference, which was kind of
mhm.
cool. Suicides portrayed as gnarled, bleeding trees, tormented by harpies. And then the third ring was sodomites and blasphemers tortured by fire rain, which, if that doesn't scare you a little bit, that's just
No,
wild.
that's
But
absolutely
visually, it's
terrifying.
so beautiful to like the dichotomy of like the different layers is just so beautiful to read about.
There's somewhere in there too. I'm just trying to remember as many details as I can.
Yeah.
Somewhere within that ring, that circle, I think were the people that I think it mentions specifically the priests of Israel at the time that had to do with leading to Jesus Christ being crucified on the cross.
Really? In one of the layers? I watched a couple of video essays on it because I was like, I don't have time to read the whole Divine Comedy right now. But after the violence layer, layer 8 is fraud, which had 10 ditches punishing in different ways for different types of fraud, which I
Hmm.
thought was really interesting. And then 9 was treachery, which was a frozen lake of traitors. And at the
Yeah.
center is Satan himself, who's depicted as the three headed beast. And my friend, I actually talked to her about Dante's Inferno yesterday. And she said, you know why it's frozen down there? Is because the devil has been crying tears of self pity.
Mm, Interesting.
She
I don't
remembered
remember
that
hearing that.
detail.
But I remember the ninth one for sure, and I think Judas was in there,
Yeah,
or he might.
Judas of Iscariot, Brutus, and Cassius, which I thought was interesting. Two characters, I guess, two real people from the time of Julius Caesar ended up in hell, which is so interesting considering, like, obviously Brutus and Cassius were bad, but there have been a lot of other really bad characters in history. And up until this point, this is what he chose to focus the Divine Comedy on, is that Brutus and Cassius are the two that were bad enough to be continually eaten and torn apart by the devil for eternity.
To make sure you understand, you know Dante's Inferno was written like hundreds of years ago, correct?
Yeah, I know that, but like there's so many other, there's other like terrible leaders and stuff who lived in throughout history outside of Brutus and Cassius.
Okay.
There's
I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
yeah, no, I know it was written in the 1300s,
What
but
did Dante write about Hitler? Did he agree with him?
no, I'd be curious. I'm sure there's been modern adaptations where they put in more modern. Of course, Judas. You always got to include Judas.
Hmm.
But I'm sure there have been modern adaptations of some sort that include other people other than Brutus and Cassius being eaten away at for eternity. So I'm just, my theater kid background brain is going to like, what would an adaptation look like if it was taking place in different points of history? Because like
Oh, well,
Alexander the Great could have been in there, or like there's been so many other options.
what was it? Speaking of adaptations, I remember that was my high school project after we read the book.
Uh
We
huh.
had to make our own interpretation of the Nine Rings of Hell. And
Oh my gosh,
so
what did you do?
it was my senior year of high school, and I that was the year that Flappy Bird was a really big thing. I don't know if you know that game.
Yes, I do know that game.
So I made it the nine levels of Flappy Bird.
Stop.
Anyone who's ever played the game knows that you
Oh,
had to position yourself just right in between the pipes, and they kept going like in different spaces. Like one would be here, but then another would be here. So, anyways, I made each ring of hell like a space in between pipes. And I was like, okay,
that's
like,
so cool.
and so like I remember there was one where I made it all kind of
Did
social
you
media
computer
focused.
generate it? Like, did you?
No, I made it all by hand. So like I took PVC
Oh, that's
pipes, I
cool.
painted them green. I took like a little yellow styrofoam ball, stuck a stick on it, made it look like the Flappy Bird. I
Oh,
just
that's
had
cool.
people just like try and see if they can like hold the bird just right and have it go through. But like yeah, there's like different punishments based off of what social media app or something that you were most attached to in life. So, like, if you were really into Twitter, you get stuck in the area where you had to listen to birds just tweeting incessantly
That's
on
so
and on
smart.
forever, stuff like that. So, I
Flappy
had a
Bird,
lot of
the
fun with
horror
it.
movie. That's so
Oh,
cool. That's actually a
oh.
really, really smart interpretation and like fits the modern interpretation perfectly. So you like totally nailed that. I
Mm,
hope you got a good grade.
I'm pretty sure I did. I was a star student,
I
not the
was
flex.
not. But I wanted to add one last little piece. So he makes it through these 9 layers of hell and then goes into Paradiso. But I really liked this quote from one of the video essays I watched where it describes this inferno as being not about the descent into hell, but about going through a path of enlightenment. And it said, this piece preaches that to grow, we often have to confront our darkest truth, which I feel like ties into the theme of as above, so below really well. I feel like they nailed that part. They're
Hmm.
like, to survive, you have to confront what you've been hanging on to. And I think in that case, it did a really, really good job at that.
Yeah, and it's not just to expand a little bit more on that, coming from a Christian perspective, it's not just confronting what you've been holding on to,
Hmm.
but also there's an active confession that goes with it. It's the
Yeah,
idea of knowing that you've done something wrong, and when what you were saying, like you're not holding on to it, and the idea is by holding on to it, you're keeping it within, and you're not telling anyone about it. But when you go and confess it, you're saying it outwards that you've done something wrong.
which was interesting though, because some of the sins would not have, or some of the atonements and the things to rectify would not have been like traditional sins. They were like very much, I didn't answer the phone. Oh, I didn't come back fast enough for my brother. It's it was very human errors, which was really interesting. And for those of you who are going to stick around for the RPG coming out in 2 weeks, you'll find that as a fun mechanic, all of our adventurers don't have any idea what each other's secrets are, as well as details of their own.
Mm.
So they have to discover throughout the campaign really what they're atoning and rectifying for, because I think that more aligns with the human experience.
Yeah, and I think what you're getting on there gets me to another point that I think is really great to mention as far as the idea of hell and what it is. Um, I remember looking at this reel one time about someone explaining why hell exists,
Mm-hmm.
and it seemed like a really smart way to explain it, which was people think that it's there for punishment. It's God punishing people, but
Mm-hmm.
really what it is it's a way of God's love. So this is what hell is. It's a place where people can it's a place where people go because they decided to turn away from God, and that kind of leads back to the problems that our characters are dealing with. Because
Mm-hmm.
it's not that they necessarily like made a mistake, like that you wouldn't be punished because you didn't answer the phone fast enough,
Right.
but it's the
Yeah.
fact that you don't think that you can be loved
Yeah.
because you didn't answer the phone, because you
That
think
makes it. Yep. There you go.
when you don't think you're worthy of that type of love because of something you hold yourself accountable for.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. I think that like makes it this. I think that's why Dante's Inferno is referred to as a divine comedy,
mhm,
and because it is this process of growth and learning to that you can be loved and accepted. So through the act of confession and atonement and rectification. So yeah, I mean, like this film was interesting in that it really challenged a lot of theological themes for a
mhm,
horror movie that wasn't strictly about demons. It wasn't like The Conjuring, which is like, yes, we're very intentionally praying away what's going on, but like you said, it does feel Christian coded because there is this underlying sense of faith without it being necessarily spoken,
mhm.
in this underlying journey of faith and atonement and finding that truth and growing through it. So, I mean, maybe through this conversation, you maybe even find yourself liking this movie a little bit more than when we started.
Maybe. I don't know. There's still you got to think about it from a critical standpoint. I want to get into how would you survive this movie, Kylie?
So I think I had to look at this from two lenses. My initial lens of like, if I thought about this outside the spiritual aspect, if I focused on the actual survival part of the movie of crawling down the tunnels, swimming through blood, like the very physical side, I honestly would have a hard time, I think, because the anxiety behind being in cramped dark dank spaces and like hearing haunting singing and like bones collapsing from underneath you or pieces of the ceiling falling underneath you over you, I think I like physically would have a hard time with it more than the spiritual side. I think as soon as I, Kylie the human, myself, would have realized that, oh, like we're in hell, I would be praying like the whole way through, like praying without ceasing and like trying to go through it from a very spiritual lens, I think. Especially since I do have a strong faith background, that would be what I would do, and I would, yeah. So I even thought about it a little bit from the D&D standpoint of like I probably would like have holy symbols on me or something like that. But you don't know you're going into hell when you go there. You just kind of fall into it, at least according to the movie. So I don't know. This one's kind of a toss up for me because I think psychologically and physically I would struggle, but spiritually I think there would be some strength there.
Oh, psychologically, yeah, I'd probably be a little messed up too. I don't feel like because I'm not really claustrophobic, so I don't think I really would have a tough time like crawling through the tight spaces. If I got stuck, maybe a little bit. Like I remember Benji had that type of problem.
That was horrifying to watch. I was just
I
like
don't
so
think
worried
I
for
would have
him.
the same reaction as Benji. Like that
Well, he had
before the
singing like coming louder and louder to him at the same time, though, too.
you see, but I would have just been like, oh, that was that one girl, not the one girl, the group of cultists at the top. Like, oh, it's just them. Please just shut up. But I wrote down a few different notes for varying degrees of how I would survive this movie. The first one is I would obviously not go down. Like, why?
Well,
Why would I
duh.
need to? But the other thing I wrote down, I remember, was also therapy. Therapy would have been the solution for Scarlet. Oh, I'm not actually responsible for my dad's unfinished work.
Yeah,
Oh, um, and I feel like I would have that sense too. Like I'm not responsible for any unfinished business for my father. So,
yeah,
oh. um, but also just the idea, kind of what you were saying. Like I don't think there would be anything down there that, like, obviously I would face something traumatic probably, but at the
yeah,
same time, it's not anything where I haven't thought about it before
yeah.
and repented
Because
or
it's
confessed it, even not even just in prayer, but like to other people. I feel like I'm pretty much an open book with a lot of people, like about my mistakes I make. So I'm not like holding on to any deep dark secret, is what I'm saying.
yeah. No, I think too, like having that sense too of like knowing it's not real as soon as you're there, because I mean the characters immediately assumed that everything that was happening to them was real, which
Hmm.
was interesting because a lot of horror movies are much quicker. Like that was the only thing they weren't smart about, was that they thought everything happening to them was real. I think similarly to you, having a good grounded sense of reality would be crucial before you go down there.
Exactly, and also I tried to break this down like strategically. How would I survive this?
Yeah.
And I made a few notes about that. First off, is like if you're gonna go down to some catacombs where you might get lost, it's really good. It's a really great idea if you have someone above in the surface that you just holds you accountable. Like, hey, I'm gonna be gone for 24 hours down the catacombs. If you don't see me or hear from me in
Yep.
24 hours, call the cops. Get a search team, come and find me. The other thing
Yeah.
is like, why is she trying to keep this journey as much of a secret as possible?
I mean, it's because like they are on a quest for treasure. So she has the assumption and theme that people are going to steal or take over the mission, I think, which makes sense, especially because she doesn't even reveal that she's after the Philosopher's Stone. She's like, "Oh, we're after treasure." Because obviously the Philosopher's Stone is the most valuable thing in there. But which
But
doesn't even
then
matter anyways at the end.
I don't think she has a lot of faith in her own mission if she's willing to hire someone like Palpion and a bunch of other kids in their mid to early 20s that
They were the
so many
ones
things
that
can
know the
go wrong.
area. Well, but you have
No,
to
no, no,
remember
you hire a professional crew.
well, remember in the catacombs, it was the atonement that Papillon is going to go through. That guy was the one who recommended Papillon to them.
Okay, wait. Which
So
guy are you referring to?
the guy who was on fire in the car is the
Yes.
same guy who was at the cat in the catacombs at the very beginning of the movie, who is like, "Oh, you should go see Papillon."
Really? I didn't catch that detail. Oh my gosh. Okay.
So that hopefully makes it make a lot more sense because that character was trying to get Papillon to come down to atone.
No, it doesn't make any sense because I would see where he is and immediately be like, "No, this ain't the guy. I need someone who comes to work in a professional suit. He's got all the right equipment,
He
but I need
does.
someone who's more professional than
I
this.
was
I
so
need
mad that half of them were wearing jeans as they were like going through water up to their waist. I was like, dude, that's just got to be so uncomfortable for the rest of the day. Like you're wearing nothing that is prepared for water at all.
I would have actually trusted like some type of government or private funder, a large team. You know what else would be great is if you had a large team. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like then there's more traumas, more people that are trauma buffers.
Yeah, more
You
people to
know?
help you snap out of it. Well, it's
No, no,
also
no. What I
though,
mean is more people that have to go through their own personal trauma, and maybe the fates that decide that, like, oh, this person can go through their trauma, this person can
stop.
go through their trauma.
You'd rather them just get like more people get got so that way you have a less likelihood of getting got. Did I hear that
Exactly,
correctly? That is
exactly.
horrible.
You know, if you move fast enough, maybe there's less chance they're going to get to me.
That's horrendous. Well, I will say, in the similar idea and theme of a government type or private agency coming down to the catacombs, that is kind of the premise of our RPG, because
Hmm.
DEAD, three members of DEAD are sent down there, and I'll do a quick reveal of who they are. Brrr. Agent Joshua will be on this mission.
Ooh, can't
Yeah.
wait.
Agent Robert is back on this mission. We love his chaotic style of play. And
Love it all the time.
Agent Nick will be on this mission.
What?
What? I'm shocked.
I had
And,
no idea.
Scarlet will be there as the NPC, here to help you as you go through the catacombs.
Scarlett, is that you? I heard you know 4 languages.
Bonjour.
Oh, she knows Spanish.
Ciao.
Great.
That was Spanish.
Was that Japanese?
Konnichiwa. I wish I knew how to say, like, that's all for now in French.
I feel like you'll be more authentic if you just say merci.
Tout pour l'instant. That was terrible.
No.
Okay. Merci. And we just want to say thank you to everyone who's been following us along. We really appreciate all the comments, especially on our short video of Bram Stoker's Dracula. That was really cool. So we really enjoy reading those. And thanks for just joining this little community that we're a part of. Make sure to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for the RPG that'll be coming out in 2 weeks.
Yes,
All right.
thank you, everybody. Love you
Bye,
all.
everyone.
Bye, everybody.